It's April 5th, 2015. So, so basically, I just described Chris Dabney and the first rape that he committed against me. And basically what I'm saying with all of these government individuals, they were all people who knew who I was. In no circumstance did I ever recognize who they were, or was I given a chance to have my memory refreshed as to, like, oh yeah, these are people who plotted against me and premeditated to ruin my life and to commit massive government hate crimes against me that basically rise to the level, when you consider all of these people together, that rises to the level of war crimes that are just as bad as anything that people are prosecuting others for it and Nuremberg. Because the UN considers repeated state-sponsored rape to be torture. So not just torture as in electrocuting me to my head and cutting me or burning me and doing these other things. That's not the only form of torture that is recognized as torture. Torture is also considered to be deliberate gang rape by if it can be shown that, or if it looks like it's not just some random occurrence that that happened, you know, in a certain area. You have to be able to establish that it's government sponsored. And sometimes in some countries, what the UN or different various international people will do is they'll say, okay, if you live in a big country like India and you're getting persecuted in one part of the country, have you tried living in another part of the country? So they won't necessarily pin it on the entire country. They won't say, well, it has to be the entire country of India. The government is harassing and raping this poor woman and torturing her. They would say, well, maybe there's a political problem in one area, but other areas are not so bad. Has she tried relocating? And then at the time that a woman relocates, and sometimes it's just plainly, it's obvious that it is state-sponsored, even if she's in just one location. But then sometimes a woman could then relocate, and if she's still getting harassed and raped by government encouragement, then a person has basically been established that they are a victim of the government, that the government itself is deliberately targeting, persecuting, and torturing an individual. And that is what the United States government has done to me. They have every motive and incentive to attempt with their highest quality means and with as many people as they can to say I'm mentally ill, because what I'm saying about these people is true. They have done nothing but victimize me and kidnap my babies. And so here is Chris Dabney, knowing who I was ahead of time. I didn't know who he was. He took advantage of the entire situation and premeditating this, wanted to have me in this flat or whatever, in a high-rise that supposedly belonged to his mom, and he wanted to be able to rape me. He wanted to rape me for the United States government, and supposedly because it was revenge for what I did to my mom, or to Dixie. You know, I mean, I've had some people say that my parents are not even my parents, biologically. Other people say that they are. But supposedly, here's another government employee, and Chris Dabney, as far as I know, was working for the FBI. I knew him when he was younger, and he was working in military too. He did military things like set up bombs, like wiring for bombs. But and then I also know that he was supposedly from the Virginia area, and I also saw him at a CIA office. I saw him at the CIA at one of their offices when I was at the CIA one time. And he was young, just like I was. And he had a friend named Ben. And Ben was there at the CIA offices. And we were basically in the cafeteria. They had separate cafeterias at this CIA place where the field operatives, like basically your spies, those people were the known ones or whatever. They had lunch or whatever in one cafeteria, the covert people. And then the analysts and the spies or whatever who were like more out in the open, the more openly known CIA members, they had lunch in a different part of a different room for a cafeteria. So I saw Chris Dabney at this CIA cafeteria when the CIA had me there one time. And but what I remember is that he was connected to FBI. So Chris Dabney has been with the government ever since he was a little kid. He's always been with them. I never have. I've been forced to be in and out of government buildings and situations, but I've never been working for them. They've always been forcing me to do things for them and then torturing me and making fun of me. And Chris Dabney, on the other hand, has been a regularly paid and salaried employee of theirs. So he is an operative. And his rape of me was premeditated. It was to degrade me, to get it on videotape. And, you know, who was getting all these videotapes? I mean, like, they were just raped. The government was raping me from one person to the next, videotaping a lot of stuff. And, you know, who's the person that really does love me, that cared about me, who is viewing these videotapes? Or, you know, did the U.S. kill everybody off that had tried to help me, and then they were just collecting a bunch of videotape because they just thought it was amusing to themselves, and how they could rape me repeatedly and I wouldn't remember? So, and if they did that when my parents didn't want it to happen too, or when one of the Bobs or the Dixies didn't want it to happen, that's possible. But sometimes they made it look, either intentionally or not, they made it look like some of them were that they were all working against me. And other times it looked more like they wanted me to think that everyone was working against me, when actually they were torturing some of the individuals. So what I can say is that Chris Dabney was not being tortured himself and coerced to rape me. He raped me, and as he was raping me, he said, "Here's another one in the hole." And he was vicious about it. His rape of me was a violent crime, just like all of these other United States government assholes' crimes against me were violent. And he was also, I know Chris Dabney was directly involved in marketing my music. So he had a part in stealing from me on the musical end of things and trafficking my songwriting around and approaching people about taking my music and giving it to different performers to perform and lie and claim that that they'd written it. So he got into the entire music industry side of things and using all of my my work. And then here he was raping me. So then I was didn't really, I was basically in shock. I was in a shock state after that. I think that between having James Cartwright having just done what he'd done and then getting raped again by Chris Dabney, and the government had kidnapped my baby. They kidnapped my son. And then just kept raping me. I hope that this country pays for what they've done. I hope every rapist that raped me suffers and pays for what they've done to me. And those who are involved, who are in the background, who think that they are not going to get caught and that they're safe, I hope they are not safe. And I hope that somebody exposes everything that's happened, and that a large group of individuals come forward to say that what I've been saying is true, and that this country is maligning me simply to cover up for some of the worst war crimes and hate crimes that the country has been committing recently, in recent decades. And every time that I tried to escape the United States, they were stealing my passport from me and my documentation, making sure that I had no money so I couldn't leave. And then after they would extract and get a kid from me, like my son, and make sure that all the ends were tied up with adoption, and that I had no way to appeal, or that it looked good on the outside to the public, and it looked like they had gone through all the steps they were required by law to go through. Then they eventually were trying to get me to leave the country, because I believe that the United States wants me to go to one of these countries that they've bribed and paid off, and they want to plot an assassination against me, because they don't want me around anymore, really. They want to kill me off, preferably in another country so they can blame it on someone else. And the reason that they would do that is because they don't want my kids. If any of my girls are alive, and I don't believe that any of them are, except for the one I just had, and if my son, they know that they'll grow up and want to meet me and talk to me sometime, unless they're being held hostage all the time themselves, same way I was. If they ever talk to me and find out what the United States has done, the United States just doesn't want that. They're not going to allow my kids to make any money in this country, to ever escape. And preferably what the United States would like is to have me dead. And any time that I wanted to leave the United States to attempt to get help during a situation when it was possible to get help for my kids, the United States government was confiscating my passports and blocking my travel, throwing me into prisons and jails on false arrest, torturing me. So after that, basically I was in shock, and I didn't have any other place to live, and I needed money for trying to help my son every single day. I wasn't like I was just over there and thinking about my son. I spent hours every single day looking for a lawyer, and no fucking lawyer in this entire goddamn country would help me. This country is just full of a bunch of legal shits who pay dues to the American Bar Association, get bribed off by the government. I mean, it's like every single lawyer is just on some kind of a government chain gang. I don't know of any independent lawyers. And when I say I was writing a lot of lawyers, I mean I wrote all of them. I was spending 8 hours a day until I had work, sending email after email to every single law firm in the entire area that I was living in, no matter where I was living, and even outside of the area. So I sent thousands of emails to lawyers. And I'm not exaggerating. And then Microsoft, which is a fucked up company, and Bill Gates and Melinda Gates can go to fucking hell. They closed my email account, so I couldn't even access it to prove. I had all of my legal files about my son, and after 6 years, they just allowed me to stack up all of this information, thinking it was safe. And then they shut it down and blocked me from my own account so that I had no way. People were stealing all of my thumb drives and my attempts to store any of my data. This country made sure that I couldn't ever protect anything. They've stolen all of my diaries and my pictures and my personal records. They stole all of my medical files. They stole all of my legal files. They made sure that they stole everything because they didn't want me to come back at them and go to international persons who might have been sympathetic and be able to show them evidence. And I don't think that they wanted me to have all these emails that showed how people were treating me and how they were lying about what was going on with my son. And they also didn't want my son to ever find out what kind of effort I had made to get him back. Because I wrote, not hundreds, I wrote at least 1,000 emails to, I contacted every single lawyer and every single law firm in the immediate areas I was in. So, for example, everyone in D.C. Everyone in Portland and Oregon. Contacted everybody except for maybe a few lawyers in the Midwest or the South. But I mean, I even tried to, tried contacting people in the South and in the Midwest and looked for them under certain genres, like, that would apply to the kind of people that would take that kind of a case. I went to the ACLU. The ACLU are a bunch of shits. They work for the government. It's like they're a shell corporation for the fucking CIA. They just pick out little cases that they decide that the CIA will hand them, so it looks like they're doing a good job at supporting people's civil rights when no one else will. And really, they're just a bunch of government fuck-ups that ignore and try to push down and oppress all of the real serious cases that are out there. And they've mocked me. They've mocked me to my face. They've been snotty. I even had to visit their offices when I was a kid, and they got bribed. They were paid off by the government, and I saw them take some money. The U.S. was taking me from one place to the next, having all these people see me in person, and then having them, basically, I was allowed to see them take money and to torture me. They would sometimes torture me in person, to torture me or harm me as part of their deal in an agreement. And yeah, this is a security that you don't have to worry we're ever going to help her in the future. They had to have access to me in person. So they'd do something horrible to me in person, then they get paid off, and I'd see it. And then their motives the entire time were just to collectively say that I was nuts while they made all this money off of me. I hate the United States, and I have hated. I mean, I don't hate all the people in the United States. But I have been trying to leave the United States since I was a kid. I've asked for political asylum multiple times, and the problem is that I'm not really sure where it's safe to go, because I saw a bunch of government officials in different countries taking bribes from the United States. I saw state officials in the United States taking bribes from United States government officials. And as to the lawyers in this in the whole country and the judges, I saw Supreme Court justices taking bribes and making deals and agreeing to slam me in the future. So when I'm trying to go through different channels and take it from one higher court to the next, I've tried to do a little bit in the past, and when I was a kid, I tried to go to higher courts, and I was being threatened and told if I did, they'd try to send me to prison for life. But when it really comes down to it, the government has already premeditated and paid off a bunch of the Supreme Court justices. So I have, I think they just thought it would be fun to have me run around, go from one jurisdiction and one court to the next at some time in the future, possibly, and then have the Supreme Court slam down on me. And in the meantime, here they are calling me incompetent, saying I'm mentally ill when I'm not, when the United States government is committing like horrendous crimes. And so it makes it sort of like, what's the point of trying to go from one court system to the next? Because I already know that there is no hope. There is no hope in the United States. And if I missed a lawyer out there, if there's some lawyer or law firm that for some reason sees this video, and is a firm that wanted to help or wanted to take my case, and that I didn't contact, then I would like to have legal representation by a big firm. But I don't see how that's possible in the United States, because these big firms are getting a lot of sponsorship from the government. The government knows where to target, knows who to bribe off, knows who might be a potential threat, and they don't just pay people off at the last minute or during a case, on the spot. They do prepayment. So when you talk about prepaid legal services, you're talking about the fucking CIA and FBI prepaying a lot of assholes to agree to never help certain individuals and certain groups of people ahead of time. They don't want you to find out where their money trail's not going. They don't just bribe people during the case so that suddenly when $500,000 shows up in Judge so-and-so's account, he can't really explain why it happened during a case with so-and-so. It's not his stock investment from his stocks. They pay people off like way ahead of time, decades ahead. And I've only seen like things like one-time payments typically, although I think sometimes it's more often than that. But from what I understand, they do like an initial down payment, and then they do more payments later. And how someone spreads it out, the United States government's very clever. They're the worst mafia in the entire world. They know how to launder money and make it look really good, like no one would ever guess or have any idea about the real origin of their money and how they're shuffling it around. They're using my money. They were using money that they made off of songs that I wrote, that other people performed and lied about to say that they were their songs. They're using money off of my songs to then pay people. Like, the more money that my hits made, the more power the United States government got against me and started just bribing everybody. I don't think that it's possible for just a single lawyer or for a couple of lawyers to take on a case like this. Anyway, they would end up in the poorhouse. The only way that I would win a case against the United States government is if a big firm took my case. And because that's very unlikely, and because I did try that with my son, basically, I just don't have, there's just nothing for me to do. There's nothing for me to do. But, I was raped and molested by a bunch of judges when I was a little kid, too. The United States government made sure a bunch of their judges at state and federal levels had incentives and motives to back up the United States government and all their theft against me. And so if anyone thinks that Chris Dabney and all these other individuals are good or nice people and that I just had a problem, they're wrong. These people are all connected to the government. It's all state sponsored, and they're gang rapists. And I'm going to talk about then how he raped me, and wanted other people to get in on viewing me and that kind of thing after that. And I will talk about how then he and others were then setting me up to be raped by yet another government operative who is Alvaro Pardo. He's a fucked up Colombian shit.